you happy and do you feel good in your body? Do you feel nourished? Does life feel lively for you, right? Because when we're not eating enough and I don't want to necessarily say malnourished, but we're just not at 100%, it impacts our day to day. What would happiness feel like for you? What would happiness look like for you?
Put up your mask, let down your guard, and let's talk about the real. This is the Bring Your Own Mask podcast. Hey everyone, welcome back to the BYOM podcast. I'm so excited for our guest today because I personally actually use her booty building app. So Cassandra is a women's booty building expert and empowerment coach, and she leads women into their strongest, most confident selves in and out of the gym. So using her experience as a multiple business owner and NASM certified personal trainer and nutrition coach, she helps women sculpt their bodies and lives so that they can bring out the best versions of themselves and find inner peace and ultimate confidence. Cassandra, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here today.
Yay. Oh my goodness. So I have been sharing with everyone about your app. I mean, I've been using it for what, 2 months now? And
2 months, yeah.
Yeah, 2 months, and the results have been incredible. So I'm just gonna lay it right on you. My first question, which is, why do you feel like everyone needs to like bodybuild or build their body, especially women?
Yeah, great question. So bodybuilding is really one descriptor, I would call it. What it really comes down to, what we're really doing is we're strength training, right? We're resistance training. And for women, this is particularly important because this allows us to build our bone mass, bone density. And as we age, right, that's one of the first things to go, right? When we experience menopause, like with our hormone changes, our bones actually start to lose that mass a little bit. That's why women are so prone to things like osteoporosis. So by building this really good habit of strength training and resistance training with weights, we're actually putting off those potential issues in our lives, in our health.
Wow. Okay. So that's really interesting because I feel like most people bodybuild because they want to look good. There's like a physical appearance to it, but I had no idea that when it comes to your health, it helps so much. It prolongs that.
Yeah, absolutely. It's more than just aesthetics. I mean, of course, yes, you look great, you feel great, but you're also able to complete your day-to-day life tasks much more easily. Think about walking in with groceries, right? If you are in a place where you've been exercising a lot, your cardio is great, your strength is great, bringing in the groceries may feel less painful, less tedious than maybe it did before you started working out.
Wow. Okay. So this is amazing. I have so many questions for you. Why don't we put down our guard? Let's put up our mask and let's talk about the real.
Okay.
Okay. So I have to ask, how did you get into bodybuilding?
Yeah. So I actually grew up a competitive athlete. I was a swimmer and I cross-trained with like running, cross country, long distance stuff. And despite being an athlete, I never had the confidence in my body that I've experienced with weightlifting. So I started weightlifting when I was in college and I was totally self-taught. I didn't have a coach. So it took me quite a while to figure out how to do it. And once I started developing the strength, both inside and out, and realizing what I was capable of, my confidence drastically changed. I went from having like no self-esteem to feeling really, really good about myself, who I was, my identity. And I realized that if I could go from feeling like a nobody and feeling like nothing to feeling so empowered mentally and physically, everybody should be experiencing this.
Okay, so I love that you say that because that's how I feel right now. Well, I started because I was trying to build my body to get married, right? Like I wanted like a nice shape and like to show off my butt. And as an Asian American, we have the stereotype that we have flat butts. So I'm like, you know what? I'm going to totally debunk it because I saw your photos and your transformation. So that's how I started. But you know, it's interesting because I also saw this before and after picture of you where you were super, you know, skinny and thin, and then your booty is amazing now. So walk us through, like, how long did that take you to go from one to another?
Yes. So my personal journey took a lot longer than it really needs to be, simply because I didn't have the educational background when I first got in and I didn't have the guidance, right? I was trying to figure it out. So I've been lifting for about 8 years now. And I really got to about 4 years ago, 3, 4 years ago, was when I really put in the effort specifically for my glutes, and they totally transformed. They were still built doing other exercises, other foundational movements, but not in the way that they've transformed in the last few years. And I attest that all to education in how to train more efficiently and eating properly.
Mm, I love that because I feel like sometimes when people start to, I mean, at least for me, right? Like I obviously like don't know anything about bodybuilding. I just follow your app. There's this misconception that oftentimes we just work out and that's
Mhm.
how we get to where we want to go. But there is so
Yeah.
many different factors like nutrition, like you
Yeah.
mentioned, and also maybe it's like strategy, like how you place your legs. So you mentioned how it took you 8 years, but the last few years is when you saw that big transformation. Would you attest that to basically, you said education, but like what else do you feel like was a really important thing?
Yeah, I would definitely say training with intention. In all areas of our lives, being intentional, being mindful is a game changer in no matter what we're doing. But when it comes to working out, with the education that I started to get through my own like pursuit of certifications, further education in these topics, it's crazy how many small tweaks can make a big difference. And these tweaks can look like eating enough, which is actually really hard for a lot of women because society has put us in this box of expectations when it comes to food. It looks like, selecting efficient exercises and leaning away from, I call them Fitspo girls on Instagram. And it's not to knock them, right? They're fabulous in that they're inspiring all these women, but they don't necessarily have the education, right? They're saying, this is what worked for me. And they're pushing that, even if what worked for them may not necessarily be the most efficient or
Mm.
proper way to complete something. And instead of a journey taking 1 year, doing their exercises could take 2 years, something to that effect.
Right, absolutely. Well, I grew up in the 90s, right? And so when I was a teen, I remember there was this societal pressure of being very thin. So that was the
Yeah.
trend back then. And I remember I was like doing horrible things to my body. I was like taking diet pills. It's just
Yep.
like that societal pressure to just look a certain way. So
Hmm.
I feel like things have shifted now. People are really honing in on self love and like eating
Yep.
right nutrition and foods. For women that are still stuck on that mindset of like needing to be very thin, what kind of advice can you give them?
So I think the first thing I would actually do is ask them if they're happy,
Okay.
right? Are you happy and do you feel good in your body? Do you feel nourished? Does life feel lively for you, right? Because when we're not eating enough and I don't want to necessarily say malnourished, but we're just not at 100%, it impacts our day to day. It impacts our moods. It impacts our relationships with our loved ones, whether it's parents, children, siblings, partners. So my first question would really be, to check in with yourself and ask, are you happy with your body?
Mhm.
Right. And if the answer is no, what would happiness feel like for you? What would happiness look like for you? Right. As a coach, I can never tell my clients the right answer, right? I can provide them and empower them with the information, but I can't go in and do the work for them. So it's the same way with women who may be stuck in that mindset of, I have to look skinny, I have to be skinny, right? What if we forgot about skinny and focused on strong, right? And strong can look different for everybody.
Yeah.
But imagining what that would feel like inside and out for you and focusing on that instead.
Yeah. And I love it that you use the word strong because, again, there is another misconception. Because when I first started, I'm like, I really want a nice butt, right? Like, I really want to look
Yeah.
sculpted. I don't want to look bulky, right? Like, I don't
Hmm.
want to look like that at all. So, can
Yeah.
you debunk certain myths about maybe
Yes.
women being bulky?
Yes, absolutely. First and foremost, it is not possible for women to become bulky weightlifting without the use of performance enhancement drugs. It really comes down to a testosterone difference, right? So men get bulky because they have significantly more testosterone than women. We don't have even near the same level. Our range is so small compared to men. And so for that reason, hormonally, it just doesn't work that way. Now, the one thing that I will say is that women are going to have different ideas of what bulky looks like. So
Sure.
bulky for some women might look a certain way, while for other women, it's like, no, that's not bulky at all, right? That's just strong. And so ultimately, no matter what, whether you're lean and cut or bulky, however you're defining either of these two things, it's always going to come down to nutrition, right? If you're eating in a massive surplus, you're going to grow. Ooh, and I really want to add in the disclaimer that that does not mean be afraid of food. There's a place for cutting if that's something you absolutely desire and you want to lean out a little bit. But remembering that as women, we also have to have enough fat consumption for our hormone health and having enough fat on our bodies for our overall health as well.
Oh, I love that so much because I recently learned that good fats are so good for your hormone levels. I used to struggle a lot with hormonal imbalance, and that was because I was not eating enough healthy fats such as avocados or coconut oil. Can you share with us more on your nutrition and like what you eat on a daily basis to provide for yourself?
Yes. So first thing I want to say is to not be afraid of anything. Don't be afraid of fats. Don't be afraid of carbs. Don't be afraid of protein. Don't be afraid of food, right? When we shift the perspective from fear to nourishment, it's a totally different ballgame, right? So I'm going to eat this to nourish my body. So as far as fats go, I personally love olive oil. So I've replaced canola oils and hydrogenated oils personally with olive oil. I've found that for myself, it works really, really well digestively. For a lot of my clients, it works really well digestively. And if you're going to select an oil, focusing more on whole foods, natural foods, in my opinion, is going to be better for overall health.
Okay.
A lot of what we consume nowadays is already so processed. Anything that we can do to minimize that by shifting from things like margarine to butter or olive oil instead of canola oil, like those small shifts can help you feel a lot better, even if it's just minutely, right? Again, it's always about the small steps that add up. And personally, I love avocados. I'll have a couple of egg yolks every couple of days, depending on my mood, where I am in my cycle, where I am in my training. Avocado oils, olive oils, flaxseed oils, those are great sources. Avocados by themselves, egg yolks are great sources. Butter is a good source. Those are the ones that I can think of off the top of my head. I actually have a guide on my Instagram page that lists great protein, carb, and fat sources if you guys want to scroll through.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, even your app, right, which I use, is great because you have a section about like macro tracking. And I feel like that really is a big thing for women because we've been so programmed by society to not eat as much as men or just like try to be slim and like, you know, be careful of what you eat. And again, I'm very glad to see that the next generation is not like that. Like we're moving in a better direction in terms of how we look at food. But absolutely, I think that when you have been programmed like this for such a long time from like the past, it takes a mind shift, even for me now, like as much as I love like working out and eating as much as I can, there's a part of me, there's like a voice that pops up like, Kristen, like, are you eating too much? Like, is this going to be too bulky? And these are like limiting beliefs that I have. I don't know if you have that too.
Yeah. So when I was running, my goal was to be light because I needed to go for a really long time. And so I was counting calories and it drove myself and my family nuts. And I eventually moved to a place where I could eat more intuitively and be less afraid of food in general. And now, for the most part, eat intuitively. But when I need to get back on track, I'll track my macros. And what I like about the macro tracking method is that it offers a lot of freedom and flexibility. And it's not as restrictive, in my opinion, as calorie counting, because you're looking at numbers the whole time, right? This is my limit. And I feel with the macro method, the psychology is a little bit different. It's eat until you hit that number, right? Try to get in this percentage, try to get in this percentage of carbs, fats, proteins. And then you don't really pay attention to the calories because it's automatically calculated. And once you hit the nourishment that you need for the day for your goals, you're good.
Yeah. And then I think you mentioned you track your macros on MyFitnessPal, right?
Yep.
Okay. Is that the best app for tracking macros?
It's the most popular app. I don't know that it's necessarily the best. It's the only one that I've used personally, so I can't speak to other ones, but it's very, very intuitive to use. It's free. it connects to my app, which makes things super, super easy. And my app is actually going to have a feature very similar to MyFitnessPal. It's still in the testing mode right now, which is why I'm still having clients use MyFitnessPal.
Awesome. Okay, so I actually want to go deeper with you. So I'm going to take off my mask. I don't know if you can take off your mask.
I think I can.
I just want to be able to take off our mask and really go deeper into, you mentioned self-love, right? And you mentioned how after building your body and shaping your body, you started to develop more self-love for yourself. Let's get vulnerable and share with us, like, how did that become so?
Yeah. So I think the biggest thing that I experienced was realizing what I was capable of. And I think as women, we experience a lot emotionally because we're extremely complex creatures mentally, but it hasn't been as socially acceptable to test our physical limits. And the physical and the mental are always, always tied together, right? If we can bear children, we can 100% lift weights and lift heavy and test our limits, right? If we can handle the emotional turmoils that we experience in our lives, right? Whether that's the generational trauma that we're trying to break or any slew of emotion that we're working through in our lives, we can lift the weight. It's just a physical manifestation of what we experience internally. And when I first started, I was working out with a friend. She's the one who got me into it. We would be working out and I would say, oh my gosh, I can't do any more weight. And she literally one time stopped me and was like, Cassandra, your body is so much stronger than you think it is.
Yeah.
And I kid you not, it was like a switch flipped in my head. And I was just able to tap into something deeper. Because I think that women have been told overtly and covertly, we're weak for a really, really long time. And to have somebody say to you, you're way stronger than you think you are. It's like, you kind of question at first and you're like, oh, well, I don't really know. But then when you actually put it into practice and finish a set and you think, you know what, I think I can do 3 more reps. You know what, I think I can do 20 more pounds. And it hits so quickly in your mind. Like, oh my gosh, have I been sitting on my own strength this whole time? And I had no idea. And that realization, I think, is the moment for a lot of women when they're like, oh, I got this. Like, I can do anything mentally and physically.
Oh my gosh. That just gave me chills because I so agree with you. I really like the way you framed it because absolutely, as women, we really struggle with balancing feminine and masculine flow,
Yes.
right? And same with men too. We both have those energies, but I especially like the way you framed it because as women, we are very powerful and strong in the sense that we are giving life, right? We carry baby, we give birth, and that takes a lot of physical and emotional strength. And personally for me, since, working on your app and going to the gym every day, I have noticed an internal flame inside of me that I didn't even know existed. And it feels really good, right? It feels like, oh my gosh, like I didn't even know that I could be lifting this heavy, right? And it feels good to kind of see myself gains and like climbing up that ladder. So I really, really, really like the way you framed it because not only is it helping someone with self-love, but it helps them with inner strength. Right?
Yes.
And I want to talk to you about how that has helped you in your business as well. How has working out and bodybuilding help you in your business?
Yeah. Great question. So like I said before, physical and mental are totally connected. And when you realize your capabilities in both of these aspects, you can transfer the energy expenditure. So, on the tough days in my business, especially when I first started, one thing that I would actually tell myself is, when I was feeling really down or like, oh, I'm really struggling in whatever aspect of my business, I'd say, you know what? I can squat like 300 pounds. There is no reason that I cannot run a successful business and teach other women to do the same dang thing.
Yeah.
And so that reminder of your capability has helped me a lot, like transfer that mindset from here's how I can push myself in the gym. There's no excuse. There's no reason that I can't find success in literally any other aspect of my life.
I love that. And for those people that think that physical will and mental will is separate, I could tell you that recently I learned that it's actually, just like you said, very connected. And in order for you to develop more mental will, you want to start off in the morning working out, because physical will somehow neurologically, I don't know how it works, but essentially it will help you have more mental will, right?
Yeah.
I kind of want to ask you on that too. Like, do you feel like your physical will has transferred to your mental will? What does that look like for you?
Yeah, absolutely. It has. So it's really interesting because technically, as humans, and we all have different capacities, we really only have X number of willpower in a day, which is why what a lot of people find is that willpower is easier in the morning compared to the evening, which is why a lot of people experience things like binge eating at night, or I'm going to have a couple snacks and then it turns into, a meal almost, right? So knowing that willpower, you only have X amount, it's really important to optimize your energy, right? That's why I'm a big proponent of follow a plan, because you spend less time thinking, you're just doing, right? And so there's less willpower in the sense of like, what should I do next? Should I do another set? Should I do this exercise? And the more you can go on autopilot for certain things, not everything, it just makes life easier. As far as like that willpower transference, it's like when you're under a bar with a lot of weight, at least for myself, my motivation is I refuse to fail. That's what goes through my head. Like, do not drop this weight in front of people. Now, important disclaimer, I don't mind dropping the weight. Like, I am not afraid to fail, but I don't want to. So for example, if I'm doing a set and I know this is a risky set for myself, do the best I can, don't fail. I'm really, really motivated by other people's energy around. When you're under a lot of weight, whatever that a lot is for yourself, in my experience, you have this adrenaline rush and it's like, I've got to do this. I've got to get it up, get it up, get it up, get it up. And that willpower transfers from the gym into other aspects of life. I've got to do this, like finish it. You complete this, find the success in this. Of course, there's going, like you said, there's the masculine and feminine, and finding that balance can be really, really hard sometimes. Obviously, we want to make sure we're not doing something that is going against what's aligned for us. But if it's aligned, right, that willpower can transfer from one aspect of your life to another.
I love that. And what you talked about really reminded me of decision fatigue, where you heard how a lot of CEOs, they just have like one outfit or like one t-shirt and like the color, and they just wear it over and over and over again, because the thought of like having to pick your outfit takes too much time and it's like mentally fatiguing you. So what I love about your app is that it is so simple in the terms that I just go to the gym, I turn it on, and I just follow exactly what you're telling me. And I don't think about what I need to do next, right? And so for those that are listening, definitely check out Cassandra's app because it's amazing. But I also want to talk about what you said in terms of the energy of people around you and how that might help in terms of getting started. So do you have anything where people can find community in your space?
Yeah, so within my app, there is an area for community support. So chat for all of the app subscribers. So you can find community in there. As far as, support from myself, I like to make myself available through the app for my subscribers as well. So if they have questions or follow-ups, they can just ask and feel supported in that aspect as well.
Yeah, because I think I saw like in your stories that you mentioned about like Booty Fam, or like I was a little bit confused about that because I'm like, wait, like, am I missing something? Am I, you know what I mean? So
you're in it, yeah.
Okay, good. I didn't know that there was a chat feature in your app.
Yeah, it's not very popular, but there are a few people who use it, myself being one of them. It's there and it's available for use. One thing that I also did with the app that I'm really, really excited about is on my website, I created a free resources page for all of my app subscribers, because I really believe in looking at health from a holistic perspective, mental and physical, as well as spiritual too. So within that resources page, there's further education on lifting, my BodyBuilding masterclass, which was one of the main products that I put out last year to educate women on how to grow their glutes. That's in there, all the mini trainings. There's journal prompts, affirmations, everything that I can do to empower you in and out of the gym is on that page. It is separate. It's outside of my app just because right now it's not a feature that I can add in technically into the app, but down the line, that's the big vision.
Okay. Yeah, I really like that you have that masterclass too, because I remember last year, I think I asked you about the masterclass, and it was funny because I feel like everyone is different in the way they learn, right? For me,
Mhm.
in a way, I have to get started first, and then I'm
Yeah.
interested in the education part. So for instance, with booty building, I'm like, let me just try it out first. So I started doing that. And now I'm like obsessed with learning about how to grow the butt, right? Because before I was just
Yeah.
like, let me just get started first. And then some people are the opposite, where they want to find out as much information as
Yeah.
possible at the beginning. And then they're like, okay, then let me get started. So for those listening, like everyone is very different in the way they learn. And what I love about Cassandra is that she gives these different options for people. And you have so much free content on your Instagram in terms of the types of tips that you give. So definitely check out Cassandra on Instagram as well. Now, before we end, I really do want to go a little bit deeper with you, if you don't mind. Since our masks are off, I want to ask, in terms of a vulnerable moment in your life, I know it took you 8 years to build your booty. Also, I don't know how long it took to build your business, but share with us a very low moment in your life and how did you overcome that?
I have two examples. One will be gym and one will be outside of the gym.
Sure.
So my gym example is that about 4 years ago, 3, 4 years ago, I did my first bikini competition.
Okay.
And I was excited about it in the sense that I wanted to see what my body was capable of. I'm an all in kind of person. So I had cut back drastically on my calories. I was, working out twice a day, doing an hour of cardio every day on top of my workouts and work and things like that. And I just remember coming home one day and just laying on my floor because I was so exhausted. And I could barely think, but the thoughts that were going through my head were just, I'm so tired. I have no idea how this is a lifestyle for some people, right? For bodybuilding competitors. And it really boosted my respect for them because I realized in that moment that what I was doing was so unaligned for my beliefs and that I was putting my body through this situation. Yes, I wanted to see what I was capable of, but at the same time, it wasn't sustainable. It wasn't that fun. And when I finally got on stage, I just remember thinking to myself, this is so stupid. I did all this work to stand in front of a bunch of judges. And I just went through this thought process at the speed of light in my head where I was like, this is like being put on show. Yes, I'm showcasing the work that I put in, but ultimately part of the competition is being able to pose properly, which I had not practiced enough, full transparency. But I just remember thinking to myself, this is so dumb. This is not why I lift. This is not aligned for my beliefs because I'm a huge proponent of balance. And I really reiterate this to my clients, my girls. I'm like, what's the best balance? And what the best balance is right now may not be what it is next season, right? And that's okay. I'm glad I did it, but I will never do that again just because it was just so unaligned for me. Going into that process, I had a really good relationship with food, and coming out of that process, my relationship with food was definitely damaged for quite a few months because it was like I went from not being able to eat to now I can eat, and now I'm just eating because I can, because somebody might take it away from me. When people tell me that they want to compete, I'm like, hey, all for it, go for it. I don't, whatever makes you happy. I am not ever going to coach anybody through that because I don't personally believe in that.
Move on to your business one. I just want to quickly insert my question, or it's more of a clarifying thing, because I really love how you went through that and then you stood in front of everyone. You're like, oh my God, this is so stupid. Because sometimes we push ourselves to this strenuous thing, thinking that that's what we're meant to do. And it's all out of ego in a sense. And then we realize oh shoot, this is not aligned with me. So I personally struggle with knowing whether it's a will that's good or enough is enough, right? And I am a firm believer that you do need some masculine will in the sense that
yes,
you give up on something, right? Just because you feel like you don't want to do it anymore. But at the same time, you don't want to continue something that's unaligned with you. So kind of walk us through what do you believe is a good balance as to when to say no and when to keep going?
Yeah. I think the first thing and most important thing to do is check in with yourself. Does this feel aligned for me?
Yeah.
big picture, right? Like in the day to day, it's very easy to get caught up in, oh, I don't feel like it. But if we just didn't do things we didn't feel like, we probably wouldn't make progress the way we want to make progress.
Right.
So ultimately reconnecting with the why behind everything that you're doing. Is the why right for me? Is how you'll ultimately determine, is this the right path, right? My why at the time was I want to see what my body's capable of. I was also told by my coach that I would probably win, but that was definitely more ego. So when I got on stage, it was like, okay, this is stupid. I don't care. Like, I want to win.
Yeah.
But ultimately, I don't ever want to do this again. So why does it matter? But I was able, I did complete one aspect of my why, which I want to see what I look like under everything with that level of effort and work. But I think, today, my why is I want to be as strong as possible. Right now I'm building back because I lost 10 pounds after getting COVID for a week. My goal is to build back to a weight that I feel really, really good at. And that's what feels aligned for me. That's what keeps me going. I also love the process. I love being under the bar. I love holding the weight in my hand. I love, as egocentric as it might sound, watching my body work in the mirror. I'm literally able to do this because my brain's telling my muscle, do this, this action. And I think that that's so motivating and inspiring because, again, it circles back to what is my body capable of?
Right. And I love that you are obsessed with the process because so many of us, in terms of like entrepreneurs, overachievers, they're very focused on the results, right? And I used to be like that exactly too. It's okay to partly, right? But I believe in self-mastery, or I think that when you focus on mastering a skill, right, or the process, it's just so much more enjoyable. And then you become obsessed with it. And then it's not a chore, right? It's not like you have to do it because you're trying to reach this end result, but you're actually doing it because you love it.
Yes. Masters are experts of the basics, right? When people tell me, oh, my workouts are boring, that tells me you haven't mastered it. Because if it were mastered, you'd have no problem doing the same thing over and over again, right? So you've made amazing progress, which tells me you're really pushing yourself. But in my app, I talk about how to track your progress. And I have you track your progress in a way that allows you to quantitatively continue to progress. That's the particular method that I'm using. It's the reps and reserve method. But it's putting you in a position where you're able to master it. And when you master it, it is fun, right? We do switch up exercises every month, every 2 months, depending on the plan. But fundamentally, the results come with repetition, with consistency.
Absolutely. I mean, it's funny because I don't know if you notice, I don't know if you see your students' stuff on the back end. Mm-hmm. Okay, you do. Mm-hmm. Okay. Because I was like kind of thinking like, I wonder if she noticed that I didn't put any photos of myself. And it's funny.
I did notice.
It's okay. So at first it was really because I didn't have time. But then after a while, I was like, you know what? Like, I kind of want to hold off on that for just a little bit, only because, again, there's no right or wrong. It's just for me personally.
Yes.
I really want to focus on how I feel rather than how I look at first, right? Eventually, I do want to take that before and after photo. I do have a before from like last year, but I don't know. That's the thing that I just realized about myself, which is like, okay, I didn't take any photos yet. Why didn't I do that? And I realized the deeper thing was because I wanted to focus on how I felt more than how I looked. Yep. But this actually leads me to my last question. And that is, because so many of my listeners are business owners, share with us, what was the low point in your business and how does it relate to all of this?
Yeah. So this may not necessarily answer the question specifically. The low point was actually before I started my business. I'd graduated college. I had done everything that I was supposed to do. I had a job. I had the signing bonus. I just had to wait 6 months to start my job. And during that time, I went to Italy and I worked in this small village in a B&B. It was at that point that it came across my radar. It was possible to build an online business and live anywhere in the world. And long story short, a whole slew of emotions went through me because it was like, I feel like I've been gypped out of my life. I don't know that I want to start this corporate job, but I made myself do it because that was all I had lined up and I had to put food on the table and things like that. And
so this was after Italy?
This was after Italy. So
Okay.
I went on my trip and was like, okay, well, I can't just totally knock this new job I haven't even started yet.
I see.
And while I was working, I was like, figure out ways to build a business, find a skill, develop a skill. My first business was in Squarespace web design. I was passionate about fitness, but I wasn't certified in personal training yet or anything like that. So I started to develop these skills that I could monetize. And at one point, I was so severely depressed in my job. I knew that if something didn't happen for me to walk away from that job, I was not going to make it to 30. And I got fired 5 days after writing in my journal, something needs to change. Like, I was let go, and I was like, I cried at first because it, as a Asian woman, it's like, oh my gosh, I'm a failure. I just lost my job. But that only lasted for about 5 minutes. And I was like, oh my gosh, I'm free. Like, I'm free. I get to do, whatever I want. And so at that point, a lot of other things happened. I was a victim of fraud. I lost all my money, moved back in with my parents. I got a job and I started to really, really go in on my business, like trying to build it up. And I was able to walk away in October of 2020 and go full time in my business. So, I think that ultimately the biggest takeaway for myself was listening to what felt right and what didn't feel right. Because when I was growing up, the emphasis was on, be successful, do the work, all of these things, standards and expectations. Yes, my parents told me, oh yeah, go have fun. But I did not operate that way. So it was a really, really big change in how I perceived my life and what I wanted. And then from a spiritual aspect, asking for it, right? Like, if you don't ask, how do you get anything that you desire in your life? And asking, it doesn't necessarily mean like asking God or higher power or universe or whatever it is you believe in, but it's asking yourself, like, what do I want? How do I make this happen?
It's interesting because as an Asian woman myself, I totally get that feeling. It's a total ego blow, right? Like, you've been built up to be raised to be like, you do not fail, you do not get fired, all these limiting beliefs. But in a way, it was a blessing in disguise. I know a lot of people that has happened to, in which like they wanted to leave their job and then some of them leave and sometimes like they get fired, which is a really good thing. Like, in the moment, it doesn't feel that way.
Right. In my head, I was like, I'm not a quitter. I can't walk away. I'm never going to walk away from this job. And I think that knowing that information, being pushed out the door, was what I needed.
Oh my gosh. I so resonate with this because like, I feel like both me and you are like fighters. I know someone that's a marriage counselor, and she was telling me all these like words that I don't understand, but in a sense, if there's like a fighter and a pursuer in a relationship, and I know it has nothing to do with bodybuilding. Well, it does. In the sense that like, there are people that are like fighters, and then there's people that are withdrawers, right? And so what it sounds like, which is very similar to my upbringing, is like, you just don't give up. Like, you'll like hang on
by a thread.
And you still won't give up.
That's already fringing, and you're like, oh my gosh, how am I gonna survive this?
I love this. Well, Cassandra, thank you so much for coming on the show. Okay, for those listening, definitely follow Cassandra on Instagram. She has amazing tips on how to build your booty and just even self-love and empowerment, confidence, all that stuff. But more importantly, get her app. I mean, she is giving BYOM podcast listeners 50% off their first month of your app, and that's amazing. So how would people be able to get this offer? They will message you, correct?
Yeah, they can send me a message on Instagram and just mention Kristen, the BYOM podcast, and I have a very special link that's already created. Send that over to you. And I would also just love to hear what goals people have, because I'm always excited to hear, what are you looking to do? Are you looking to be the strongest? Are you looking to grow the glutes? Are you looking to just feel really good? I would love to hear goals as well.
I love that. And that's when you know you're a good one, right? Because you actually care about people's, success. It's not just for, obviously subscribers, which is amazing. But I love that about you. I love that you actually really care about people's progress, because when I first started with the app, you're like, okay, like, what do you want to do? Like, how are you doing? And you're like constantly checking in on me, which I love. And I think that feature where you're able to chat with people that are on your app is so amazing. And also for those that are wanting to get the app, I really encourage it because again, it's just such a step-by-step process that you don't have to think about, right? And then Cassandra on the back end changes the exercises. It's based off of your plan, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so get on it. And yeah, thanks again, Cassandra.
Thank you so much.